Hello, I'm Jeremy Dronfield and I'm here to tell you about my new book, Fritz and Kurt. It's an all-new retelling of my best-selling book, The Boy Who Followed His Father Into Auschwitz, written especially for young readers. Based on interviews, archive research and a secret diary, it tells the incredible true story of two brothers, Fritz and Kurt Kleinman, during the Holocaust. It's a story of terrible hardships, but also a story of love, courage and hope. Fritz was 14 and Kurt was only 8 when the Nazis came to Vienna. Fritz and his father were arrested and sent away to Buchenwald concentration camp, while Kurt and their mother were left in Nazi-occupied Vienna, struggling to survive. When Fritz's father was transferred to Auschwitz, a certain death sentence, Fritz volunteered to go with him. His fellow prisoners tried to persuade him not to, but Fritz felt he would rather die than be parted from his beloved papa. So he signed up for the transport. What followed is an incredible, unparalleled story of danger, survival, resistance against the SS, and plotting to escape, always with the hope of making it home to Vienna. Meanwhile, Fritz's little brother Kurt was sent all alone, aged just 11, to America. All he took with him was his little suitcase, his travel documents, and a gift from his mum, a harmonica. It was an astonishing journey fraught with dangers and challenges, and although he found a safe home in Massachusetts, Kurt never stopped missing his family, longing for them, and wondering if he would ever find a way back to them. I'd like to read you a short extract from the book. This is from the absolute beating heart of the story, the moment when Fritz made that incredible, courageous decision to stay with his papa when he was being sent to Auschwitz. From that moment, the doomed men weren't allowed to see any other prisoners. They could only wait for the transfer to Auschwitz to begin. That night, Fritz was haunted by the memory of his papa standing with the others, and he couldn't stop thinking about all the time they'd spent together and the things they'd been through. The thought of being parted forever was more than Fritz could stand. He knew Robert was right. He knew he had to forget about papa if he wanted to survive. But how could he? His fears about what had happened to Mum and Herta filled him with despair. How could he live without papa? How could he stand by and let him be taken away? By the next morning, Fritz had decided what he needed to do. Before roll call, he went in search of Robert Sievert. "I need you to get my name added to the Auschwitz list," he said. Robert was appalled. "You're not serious. Those men will all be killed, gassed. I told you have to try to forget your father." "I can't. I want to be with my papa," said Fritz. "No matter what happens, I can't go on living without him." Robert argued with him, but Fritz wouldn't change his mind. Without Robert, Fritz might have been dead long ago, so he felt guilty about throwing his life away like this. But what choice did he have? With a heavy heart, Robert gave up and went to speak to Lieutenant Schobert. As roll call was ending, the loudspeaker bellowed, "Prisoner 7290 to the gate." Fritz went to the gatehouse where Schobert was waiting for him with his usual sneering look. Fritz explained that he needed to go with his father. Schobert shrugged. It was all the same to him. As long as Jews were sent to be disposed of, he didn't care. "Very well, I'll tell them to add you to the list." And that was it. There was no turning back. An SS guard marched him across the square to Block 11. The door opened and Fritz was pushed inside. The block was only meant to hold 200 people. With 400 inside, it was crammed to bursting. As the door slammed behind him, Fritz found himself looking into a mass of striped uniforms. standing, sitting on the few chairs, squatting on the floor. Dozens of faces turned to stare at him. As soon as they realised why Fritz was there, they pleaded with him, just like Robert had. They told him he was being crazy, that he had to save himself while he still could. Fritz took no notice. He pushed through the crowd, searching for his papa. And there he was, the familiar, thin, lined face with those gentle eyes. Fritz and Papa threw their arms around each other and hugged, both sobbing with joy. They were going to die, but for them it didn't matter, as long as they were together. The next day, the doomed prisoners were marched out to the square. They were ordered to take no belongings with them. Food was handed out for their journey. Fritz and Papa had a lump of bread each. Even the SS were in sombre mood. Usually they shouted abuse at prisoners being transferred, but not today. It was as if even they understood that this was different. Outside the main gate, buses were waiting. The prisoners travelled down the blood road in far more comfort than they had run up it 3 years ago. Fritz had seen and learned so much since that day. At Weimar train station, they were loaded onto goods wagons, 40 men in each. "They're all saying it's a journey to death," said Papa to Fritz after the wagon door had clanged shut. "But we won't let our heads hang down, will we, Fritz? Remember, a man can only die once." The train groaned and began to move. They were on their way to Auschwitz. To find out what happened to them in Auschwitz and what happened to Kurt in America, you will need to read the book. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.